We have questions right now about how something like this could have happened. How could Donald Trump have been shot with Secret Service detail? In this video from Milk Bar TV, the individuals over at Milk Bar did something I think is a great service, published earlier in the morning at 2 a.m. They compiled the videos that we've seen released so far, synchronizing Trump's words with other videos, creating a timeline of events. And we've learned some startling things, something that shocked me to my core, and I'm sure most of you will be as well. 2 full minutes pass with people knowing a man with a gun is bear crawling on a rooftop with bystanders screaming. I have a question for all of you. Corey Mills brought it up yesterday. It's an important point. At no point did one member of law enforcement, at no point did one member simply say, shoot her on the roof. The Secret Service would have just walked up onto the stage and grabbed Trump and pulled him away. That detail alone causes me great pain because it presents in my mind a logic that I can't escape. That somehow, in an official capacity, somehow, this was allowed to happen? Now, I can't tell you how. I don't know. People win the lottery. These things happen too. Certainly, it's possible that with every word said against Donald Trump, every action they've taken against him, sooner or later, a crack in the armor would appear and some psychopath would take his shot. But none of this makes sense. Now, you've got varying degrees of conspiracy on this one. The left, that Trump staged it. That's an absurdity. On the right, that either this was abject negligence or it was intentional. The deep state made a move to take him out. Certainly, there are prominent conservative figures saying the FBI is behind this. I don't know about that. I don't know who's behind it. At the bare minimum, though, after watching this video of Trump's speech and the timeline of events, it's hard to conclude that this was a lone gunman individual who just found the crack in the armor. I don't want to play the video in full. It is 5 minutes long, and many of you have seen it, but I want to highlight a few key points. We see here at the 10-second mark, as Trump is speaking, you can hear Trump speaking in the background of these other videos where bystanders were filming an individual climbing up a ladder, bear crawling on a roof with a rifle. 18 seconds, they're screaming. We got reporting later on that a police officer actually confronted the man, who then aimed his weapon at the officer, who retreated. The question I have, watch this video. We're at 1:21. It has now been 1:21 since the shooter was identified by police and by bystanders. My question for you is this. Not a single person, not a single Secret Service agent ran up on stage, grabbed President Trump, and rushed him off stage to his vehicle. It doesn't make sense. I watched this video. 1:48. Several videos now. You see people all over the place pointing, yelling. We make it to 1:53 when it goes down. You can hear people screaming. 2 minutes and 1 second before the first shot is fired, which appears to strike Donald Trump, who then takes cover, drops to the ground. Secret Service then runs up. Explain it to me. Explain it to me in a way that makes sense. Explain to me how Secret Service, local police, ignored bystanders for 2 minutes with the threats that have been made against Donald Trump, with the statements made against him, with celebrities holding up bloodied heads of Donald Trump and getting fired over it. Explain to me how when Trump supporters scream, he's on the roof, he's got a gun, they do nothing. Now, this is hard for me. It's a hard one for me because I cannot, for the life of me, fathom that all of these cops and all of these Secret Service agents are in on anything. And I don't believe that's true. The idea that every element of the security detail were told in advance, yeah, we're going to let this happen. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. But I also don't believe that this was a lucky psychopath. Let's start from the beginning. Secret Service security. Corey Mills, representative from Florida, was being interviewed, and he said when they did this work, because he's worked with Secret Service, he was in the Army, they talk about this when they're doing their security assessments. What are our vantage points 100 yards out, 200 yards out, 300 yards out? Heck, in the movie Shooter, a fictional movie with Mark Wahlberg, the government goes to Mark Wahlberg and says, here's the layout. What are where could this go down? And they ask the guy who's a sniper, and he says, here are your vantage points. There was no law enforcement, no police, nobody near that building on that roof. Let's add that up together. Let's play Occam's razor. And again, I'm stressing. I'm not saying I know at all. I'm not saying, I'm saying whether you believe it or not, there are questions that need to be answered. And these questions needs to be investigated. I feel that in most of these situations, we end up with some explain it away. How is it that between 130 and 150 yards out with a direct line of sight to the president's stage, there are buildings with a ladder, no security, no police? That's problem number one. How? Direct line of sight. Okay, explanation first. They didn't do a proper security assessment. Possible. Let's add another grain of sand to that heap. 2 minutes and 1 second before the shots ring out, people are screaming there's a man on the roof and that he's got a gun. How does that happen? That no action was taken. Negligence, perhaps. Negligence? Nobody got on the radio and said anything? Confusion, disarray, failure. Certainly it's a possibility. Because like I said earlier in the beginning of the show, certainly people do win the lottery. 1 in 3 million's chance, and you might get $1 billion. It happens. It happens. These things can line up. And considering the amount of rallies that Trump does, and considering the amount of enemies that the media has generated, and I do blame the media for this, sooner or later, someone would find a crack in the armor. Unfortunately, having been through security issues myself, and I'm not trying to bring it on me, I'm just saying with my personal experience, the experience I've had with Secret Service going to many of these events, the statements of Dan Bongino and Corey Mills, the security I have personally witnessed for other prominent celebrities, personalities, and speakers. I just can't wrap my head around this. I cannot understand how this happened or how it was an accident. When we go through security, when we're hiring people, we talk about the level of security requirements. I've done events where I've got a guy walking behind me the entire time. We had an event where we had to dispatch security to surround a building. I don't want to pretend like it's 50 people. It's like we had 3 or 4 people go out and monitor outside of a building because of security threats. And you mean to tell me the front runner for the 2024 election, the popular choice currently in the polls and predictions, and a former president, and there was a building with a direct line of sight to him, a 2-minute advanced warning, and this man was allowed to get off a shot that if only Donald Trump hadn't turned his head, would have taken his life. It is very, very difficult for a reasonable person to conclude this was mere chance. Now let's talk about what that means. It doesn't mean that any law enforcement's in on anything. And it does not mean there's a conspiracy. It doesn't. I believe that conspiracies are possible. What could this have been? Well, in the most extreme and absurd case, which I certainly do not believe, everyone's in on it. But Trump, Secret Service knows. And they're told not to pull the president. I really, really doubt that. Unfortunately, I showed a clip earlier where there was a politician saying Trump should be eliminated. The Democrats are calling him an existential threat. Certainly, if you've spent nearly a decade now screaming that this man is Hitler who will destroy this country, you will generate some fervent psychopaths. Now, let's say this is an emergent phenomenon. Throughout the years of rhetoric, calling Donald Trump the worst names in the book and claiming he's going to end the world and all of these things, you have instilled in people's minds a Trump derangement syndrome. We know Trump derangement syndrome exists because most of you have experienced someone who has it. They seem to be irrational. It doesn't matter what's true or false. They believe the craziest things. You'll ask them what they don't like about Trump and they have no answer. Now, is it possible that, considering how many people work in the government, someone in the government has Trump derangement syndrome? I think at the highest level, Democrats know Trump is certainly not a threat to democracy, whatever that means, because Donald Trump was already president for several years, for a full term. And what did he do? He did nothing. Okay, well, to be honest, no new wars? Oof. Maybe that's the threat they're talking about. No new wars. He did not invoke the Insurrection Act. He did not create camps. He did not round people up. Oh, they tried lying and claiming he did, but, you know, those immigration detention centers were built during the Obama years. To be honest, the reality is Trump was a marginal president. No, hold on. Because I know a lot of people are going to say he's the greatest president. Hold on. I think Trump is the greatest president of my lifetime. And I say that because it's the only thing I can say. If I wasn't alive, I don't really understand the tumult the country experienced and who was good or who was bad. Certainly no, Jimmy Carter wasn't good. We know there's Woodrow Wilson and a couple other really bad ones. Buchanan, perhaps. In my lifetime, Donald Trump has done the best job. And for that, he deserves to be rehired. And what is that best job? Well, as our chief executive officer, he did not put people in camps. He did not invoke the Insurrection Act. He did not go round up leftists or do anything of the sort, even when the Summer of Love riots were in full swing. It shows restraint. Amazing. And they claim behind the scenes Trump was saying he wanted people shot, and none of it happened for some reason, because they're lying. Because Trump is marginally good. I mean it. I know a lot of people who love Trump want to hear that, no, he's absolute the best period. Let's break this down in a couple ways. He is the greatest president of my lifetime because he did good. He did good in the moral sense. I mean that literally. But he also did well for a president. The economy was going well. Peace agreements were popping up all over the place thanks to President Trump. He went to North Korea, crossed into enemy territory with no security detail in a sign of peace and goodwill with an enemy nation that we are at war with. And I have tremendous respect. He made some mistakes. Tomahawk missiles fired into Syria, commando raids in Yemen. Outright admitting, I mean, look, we're aiding Saudi Arabia because we want these weapons deals. They're good for our economy. He tried to withdraw our troops from Syria. They lied to him and us to keep them there. He got our troops out of Afghanistan. These are all such tremendously great things. But, you know, he hired some bad people. He did. Bolton was a huge mistake. Milley, I mean, he was betrayed by some of these people. Let's not get into the FBI, the CIA, and the people that he hired. Not good people. And so I say when you look at all of it, Trump is the greatest president because he did better than everybody else. But in terms of an actual standard, it was marginally good. But they don't like that. They say he's an existential threat, and I wonder what that even means. Now, back to the point. Certainly, after a decade of this, you drive someone to going mad. There are many questions about the shooter, and I'm not going to name him. I'm not going to say his name or show his photos. And this is important, too. You know, when on Saturday, people were sharing fake photos. I mean, the information is always really, really bad when it comes out, when news breaks like this. Apparently some random guy posted pictures of himself and then claimed he was the guy. And then a bunch of different versions of this guy's photo started going around, and he panicked saying, it's not me. And now there are people who still believe that this guy who posted what he claimed were selfies, I don't know. Maybe it was him. I have no idea. And they've given us a name. It's been reported far and wide. And, you know, I want to wait before we get into the greater detail on that and make sure that the facts are correct. But the point that I want to make in all of this is, how did you not assess 100 yards out? How was there a building with a ladder right up to it that gave you a perfect line of sight where you could belly crawl with people screaming for 2 full minutes? I'll tell you my view. I certainly believe there's a probability that this is, you break a system and eventually someone finds a hole in the armor and there are crazy people targeting Trump. And the reason why this one happened is because in other instances, those individuals were thwarted, but this time they screwed up. It's a possibility. However, based on my understanding of security, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. And it doesn't require a whole lot. Now, I'm sure the argument from the media is going to be that Tim Pool's a crazy conspiracy theorist for even entertaining the idea. And they're going to try to imply that I'm saying that the entirety of Secret Service, FBI, and whoever else, I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying one person in some kind of official capacity simply says, I'm going to do the plan for this, guard this perimeter, but forgets to assign someone to the building. It is that simple. I worked security at a venue once, and the guy who ran security knew the layout of where the security guards were. The individual security guards did not. The only thing I knew was that I had a door to my right, and I was to make sure nobody walked through it. I had no idea where anyone else was. I had a radio if something happened, and that was it. So understand this. If the man working security at that venue wanted something to happen, he need only not assign a security guard. That's not necessarily a conspiracy, right? It's one guy saying, if I don't put a guard at that door, anyone can sneak in. And if they knew that people were casing the joint because they wanted to, he could make that happen. I take a look at this instance with Donald Trump and how this went down. And you mean to tell me that they didn't secure the building with a line of sight to the president? I don't believe you. I don't believe you. That's the first place to put someone. The first place. Now, why was it that nobody called it on the radio and warned the president? Again, it doesn't need to be every single person. It just needs to be confusion in the ranks. Certainly it's possible. At the administrative level, in the official capacity, someone's bad at their job. But considering everything we've seen targeting Trump and otherwise, I find it hard to believe that's the simple solution. Occam's razor, in the absence of evidence, the solution that makes the least amount of assumptions tends to be the correct one. Are we to assume that every law enforcement officer failed, the entire security assessment failed, that the warnings were like all of those things lined up? It is possible. But I don't think it's simple. I think it's much more simple that people have been screaming that Donald Trump needs to be stopped, eliminated. He's been threatened before. Someone tried to go and kill Kavanaugh and his family, and they were stopped by law enforcement. But someone did try to do that. Why? Why does it? I don't know. It's a coin toss because I really don't know. I really, really don't know. I want to know. I know all of you do too. I don't know. Some people have questioned the Secret Service agents who were staring down the man on the rooftop. I do not blame the individual law enforcement or Secret Service on this regard. There's a very important distinction between the Secret Service agents who should have pulled Trump off the stage. There's deep criticism for those who should have just said into their radios, we got a guy on the roof. Get Trump down now. False alarm or otherwise. But an excellent point was made as to why the Secret Service on the roof did not just shoot the man. Now, some have said it's because we're not there was an interesting post. They said, we're not in Afghanistan. We're not in Afghanistan. You don't just shoot a guy you see. Secret Service doesn't know what's going on with this guy. There was someone who posted on Twitter saying that they were in combat in the Middle East and they were staring at what they thought was some kind of person or a shadow for about 30 seconds before a bullet started getting shot at. Some people believe the Secret Service agent should have just opened fire as soon as they saw somebody on that roof that may have had a gun. But think about the political climate we're in. A Secret Service agent gunning some random guy down and he's holding a mop or something. Who knows? The bigger problem was that Secret Service did not secure a rooftop, which was obvious to everybody, that it should have been secured. A football field, just over a football field away from the direct line of sight for the president. The front runner for the 2024 election, a former president. We call him the honorific title, Mr. President. But what about in those few seconds when they did open fire and they ended this man? The important thing that I think a lot of people may have missed, and this has been reported now, is they thought it was a cop. Secret Service thought they had law enforcement on the roof. So when they saw someone that they couldn't quite make out wearing strange clothes with a weapon, they're thinking to themselves, what is that? because law enforcement was supposed to have secured the roof like they always would have in any normal circumstance. So these guys watching out for the president, the explanation we've been given so far is they thought it was local law enforcement. And as soon as they realized it wasn't, they ended him. So the question then remains, how was there no law enforcement on that building? It doesn't make sense. It's too easy to say they made a whoopsie daisy. That's too easy. It does not make sense. Oh man. I've been in way too many places during riots, even covering news, just sitting in my room watching the internet. And all of you know this. Go to Washington, D.C., and there are snipers on rooftops. Tell me how, and make it make sense. It's convenient, isn't it? Whoops. I'll tell you where I lean. And then we'll talk about the left's conspiracy theories and things like that. And then I do want to make sure we'll read many of your super chats, and I want to talk about the leftist activist response and Destiny response. Man, I'll tell you what I think. About a week, 3 weeks ago, how long has it been? Brandon Strzok of the Walkaway campaign came on Timcast IRL. This was several weeks ago because Trump was supposed to be sentenced on July 11th to prison in New York, just before the start of the RNC, which is happening right now. And I asked Brandon Strzok, do you think Donald Trump will be, or I don't know exactly how the conversation flowed, but the question came up, will Donald Trump go to prison? Excuse me. And I said, I don't think so. I think house arrest. It's the logical move. They put an ankle bracelet on this so you can't leave your house. You're stuck in New York City. You can't campaign. You can't go to the RNC. And Brandon said, I hate to be the black-pilled guy here, but they're going to put him in prison. Why would they do that? They have done everything in their power to go 100% at Trump the entire step of the way. Democrats, the members of the FBI, the DOJ have done everything in their power to go after Donald Trump. Why would they stop now? And immediately I said, you're right. You're right. I've made a similar argument. Where's the off-ramp? Why would they stop now? What is the logic behind deciding now's where we draw the line? So I agree with Brandon Strzok. The move was to put Trump in prison in an orange jumpsuit. I mean, they're posting insane comments, convicted felon, convicted felon, convicted felon, over and over and over again. But something happened. Supreme Court ruled in a way that many of us didn't expect. Now, we expected presidential immunity to a certain degree. Will Chamberlain nailed this, saying they're going to say the president has immunity for constitutional and official duties, and they're going to throw back the question of whether Trump was engaged in official duties to a lower court, which is what they did. They did something else. The Supreme Court added that official actions can also not be used as evidence of wrongdoing. Thus, when they convicted Donald Trump in New York, citing actions he took in his official duty as president, it calls into question the validity of the trial under the Supreme Court's interpretation of the Constitution and presidential authorities. And for this, sentencing was postponed. They intended to put Trump in prison, but their lawfare failed. The result? The most extreme action would be taken. I'm not saying it's a 100% certainty. I'm saying it's an interesting chain of events. That Trump, who is supposed to be in prison on the 11th, was instead at a rally in PA where security failed in every conceivable way. And I mean it, every conceivable way. They didn't secure a building with a direct line of sight to the president. They let the man get several shots off. They didn't heed the warnings of the public. In every possible circumstance where security could have failed, it did. Congratulations. You won the lottery several times in a row. I don't know for sure. And again, I know the media is going to say, oh, Tim Pool's a conspiracy theorist. He's just asking questions, blah, blah, blah. Spare me. I don't care. I don't care what you think. I love puzzles. I love connecting the dots. I love, doing finding the patterns and reading the math. And I can't understand this. The only thing I can see is Democrats screaming for years, every lie imaginable, claiming Trump's a traitor to this country, that he's working for the Russians, that he's an existential threat, that he has to be stopped. I see these several other attempts that have been made on his life. I see a president who they have waged lawfare against relentlessly and endlessly. I see the predictions of Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson saying, this is the track we are on. And the media saying they're crazy, they're crazy, they're crazy. It'll never happen. And then it does. And who am I supposed to believe now? Tucker Carlson, who got it right, who lined up all the pieces and said, this is what's going to happen. We have to stop. We have to stop this. Or the people who have been screaming to the high heavens that Trump is an existential threat, who raided his home, and in the FBI warrant, they had the authority to use lethal force at Mar-a-Lago, and the media lied and said, no, they didn't. It was actually just a standard procedure. So they did? Remember this. When they raided Mar-a-Lago, they had the authority to use lethal force. Secret Service would have been with Trump. They had a contingency for what to do if Trump had arrived when they were raiding his property. Now, they're doing this when Joe Biden also had classified documents and didn't do the same thing. I'm sorry, I can't look at all of the puzzle pieces and just wash them away and say, what a strange coincidence all this happened. Again, I'm not saying I know what happened. I'm saying, at the bare minimum, it seems like someone in an official capacity, and let me explain what that means. It means that a single guy who works in some office somewhere, who hates Trump, took it upon himself to make a phone. Let's say the bare minimum. He goes, "Oh, hey, John, they're stationing you on the roof. Actually, we got a reassignment for you. Yeah, because they're going to send someone else. We got locals who will be there. Why don't you go around the back?" It may have been that simple. But you tell me how all security failed on that day. It is, but by the grace of God. And for those that don't believe in God, luck. It's hard to believe in. That Donald Trump turned his head to the right to point at a chart. So the bullet went through his ear. If his head was pointed straight, right to the side of his head. We are all so lucky. Not everybody is lucky. Donald Trump shooting raises lots of questions, former FBI official. I'll wrap up this portion of this portion of the stream with this. From Newsweek. Frank Figliucci, former assistant director of the FBI counterintelligence, told Newsweek that it hasn't yet been determined which agency was responsible for securing the rooftop overlooking the rally. The U.S. Secret Service used the phrase "zero failed" to describe their mission. Saturday's incident was not a good day for the service. Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee, was speaking at a rally. We know what happened. What a brave man. The former president was seen grabbing his right ear. They go on to mention a little bit more. The investigation into what failed will have to include how someone could get on a rooftop with a rifle within easy sniper range without being stopped. If that rooftop was outside the hard perimeter, why? If that building was delegated to local or state police, why didn't they secure that building or rooftop? Lots of questions and no answers. The lone actor or a small cell of independent actors is nearly impossible to thwart. Look for the FBI and the Secret Service to knock and talks with suspects to disrupt them from traveling, he said. Now I'll say this. Again, I don't know that anyone in an official capacity had anything to do with this. But it is strange that the roof was allowed to be left open. Let's say that a local police officer was instructed to guard that rooftop, and that's why he was there, and that's why he confronted the guy. Then we do have our answer. When this guy was climbing on the roof, and the cop who was supposed to be securing it saw the rifle, he ran away. It may be that simple. It's just so hard to believe, Again, I'll stress, I honestly don't know. They say the lone actor has always been the greatest challenge for counterterror and law enforcement agencies. We live in a free society where law enforcement does not routinely monitor all communications or social media, or do we want them to? In this shooting, there's no indication yet that the shooter was openly threatening the former president, nor even that he is known to law enforcement. A lot of people are saying that this guy, he's got no social media presence. He's a young man with no social media, weird political alignments that don't make sense, donating to this party, Just seems weird to everybody. I can only conclude that I don't know. But at least that's what people think. I will say my main point is it's hard to believe that this was the actions of a lone shooter who got lucky. It makes no sense. I guess there's one thing I could say. I'm here at the RNC, and there is security like crazy. My team's been told that security is being upped. To what degree, we don't know. It may be an administrative background check thing. That's all it may be. I don't know if they're bringing in more personnel. No idea. But it was crazy to me as I'm walking around, like, we're in Milwaukee at the RNC. It's like there's so many people here, and I'm just walking down the street. I'm certainly not a president, but I was just thinking about how open everything really is and how hard it really is to secure things. Well, my friends, we've got a lot more to talk about, but I'm going to wrap this portion up as a specific segment. So smash the like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show if you like it. Follow me on X. A lot of people were asking, why didn't you go live over the weekend, Tim? Because we were traveling to the RNC. Some people said, use your phone. I'm like, oh, fair point, I guess. I don't know. But I was very much reporting and speaking on X where I could. We didn't have the studio set up. And honestly, were we back at home, we would have had Timcast IRL live that moment. And I was talking to the crew about it. But here we are. Had just arrived in Milwaukee that morning. And I flew Saturday morning. We got here a couple hours before this happened. The crew had just arrived with the gear, and we were just relaxing. I'll be completely honest. I was hanging out at Potawatomi Casino, playing poker with the boys. There was nothing set up. Half the people hadn't even shown up yet because it's the weekend. And no one expected that to happen. But of that photo of Donald Trump, I will say, the man across from me as we were playing, the moment this goes down, me and there's a politician, local rep. We saw these photos. The guy across from me looked at that photo of Trump raising his fist, and he's like, right alongside Iwo Jima. The last thing I'll say in this, wrap this portion up. Why was I at Potawatomi? For one, it's fun. I enjoyed doing it. It was a weekend. I didn't expect this to happen, and I didn't have any equipment with me, and I honestly didn't really know what to do, but I was tweeting like crazy. But the other thing is, a lot of these RNC big shots were there throwing money around, and I wanted to see who was doing it. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy myself. I take time off when I take time off, and I enjoy the game. Yeah, I got no easy answers. Perhaps I could do better. I don't know. I did what I did. Do what I can. Head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member. We've got a lineup of great guests throughout this week here at the RNC. It's going to be crazy. I'm very worried. I'm very scared. I'm scared for all of you. I'm scared for all these politicians. There was a conversation about leaving. The moment this went down, I talked with some of the crew saying, do we pack up and fly back now? Security risks are too high. I mean, they tried to take the life of Donald Trump. But we decided to stay. Part of it was, yeah, I said, we need to have a live show up right now with the crew. Bang, bang, bang. We couldn't do it. And talked to a few people and we decided to stay. It may be safer. But let's do this. I'm going to wrap this segment up. I've got more segments to record. We're going to keep going live if you're watching live, so stick around. And this portion of the show will go up at 1. But I've got a few more segments to talk about. We'll just keep it live because this is a special report. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you at the next segment.